Imagine you were raised in a survival-based childhood with fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Maybe you were. Maybe that's the actuality of what you lived in childhood. I want to illustrate how people that are raised in a survival-based childhood with fight, flight, freeze, fawn typically end up in unhealthy relationships in adulthood, and not just unhealthy, like severely unhealthy, severely fucked up dynamics in relationships. But the unfortunate thing is, their survival based childhood conditioned them to choose to be afraid of stepping outside of those dynamics, of potentially getting curious about what else could be, what else life itself, other people itself could offer. When you are raised in survival with fight, flight, freeze, fawn, you do not get a healthy childhood. You do not get healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation. Instead, the likelihood that you are mind fucked with fear is very high. Well, why are you mind fucked with fear? Well, let's first look at the dynamic of learning that your worth is tied to things out there rather than learning that your worth is inherent within yourself. Your parents didn't validate and approve of you and then teach you to validate and approve of yourself. No, they taught you that your worth is out there. That's very exhausting. It really is. If you believe that your worth is out there, then you have to do a bunch of things in order to achieve that worth out there. You don't have inherent self-worth. Many people live this way. So imagine you were afraid to stop living that way. Imagine you were afraid to discover your own potential of actually being able to love yourself, validate and approve of yourself, accept yourself. It's probably hard for people that have learned to tie their self-worth to the external to comprehend that you don't actually have to do that on the path of healing. It's probably comfortable and familiar to be scared of even considering yourself the determiner of yourself. It probably doesn't compute for people to be like, wait a second, there's no authority above me. I've been taught that I have to do a bunch of things, X, Y, and Z, to achieve self-worth out there. I was taught that only that person or, whatever is in charge of my self-worth. Well, if you so choose to externalize your self-worth, then yeah. But that's only you choosing to externalize your self-worth. What if you were to stop being afraid of taking that back and instead to get curious about your own potential to just, oh, wait a second. Yeah, there's no one above me. I determine myself. Nobody else gets to have the power of determining me. Nobody else gets to have the power of, validating and improving of me. I mean, when you really look at it for what it is, like, quite honestly, what the fuck does that even mean? What does it even mean if somebody else validates and approves of you? Who the fuck are they anyway? Probably somebody that you've learned to unconsciously or subconsciously place on a pedestal. They're just a person. Like, what the fuck is the actual hierarchy here when we're all just people? Maybe fear has become comfortable and familiar to you. And because of that, you are, with that, afraid to take your power back and to stop being so concerned about the external. The external changes, it completely transforms when you change and transform. I would argue that this doesn't happen overnight, but it's better to become aware of this than to just live in a fucking daze of, just not understanding things that you could otherwise understand. Maybe your survival based childhood taught you to be afraid of yourself, of people, of the world, but simultaneously and both oddly and interestingly enough, choose that which you are afraid of. Because the entire dynamic was fucked up from the beginning. So you're essentially choosing what you're afraid of, even though what you're also simultaneously afraid of, because you're projecting the fear onto it, is the unknown, when you don't understand how the unknown could transform your life. What if you were taught that you should be in relationships with people that you fear, and you were taught that that is a normalized dynamic with people? What if? I'm not saying that that's the case for you, but what if? What if you believe that it's normal to be in relationships with people that you fear, and you've learned that that's the only way that you can trust people is if you fear them? Why would that be healthy? It's not. Well, because let's put it this way. If you were raised in a survival-based childhood with fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and your parents mind-fucked you with that entire dynamic, well, aren't your relationships then fear-based? Your parents didn't normalize a healthy dynamic with you where you got to receive healthy boundaries, you got to individuate, and you got to differentiate. No. Instead, it was very much fear-based, was it not? Fawning, people-pleasing, hoping that somebody will love you or validate you, learning an anxious, insecure, fucked up attachment style. If you're anxious and insecure, doesn't that mean that you're worrisome? Doesn't that mean that you're afraid? What does that have to say about the dynamic that, if this applies to you, you learned in childhood? That dynamic is real, as I will call it fear-based. It's not just survival-based, it's also fear-based. If you are in a relationship with somebody and you have an anxious, insecure attachment style, does that not mean that you are afraid in relation to the other person or the multiple people that you are? That it doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship, it doesn't matter if it's a friendship, platonic. If somebody does not provide you with a healthy, safe, secure dynamic, I mean, I would personally argue that you are in a fear-based relationship. It's not healthy to be in a relationship with somebody where you are anxious and insecure regarding your attachment to them. But in a survival-based childhood with fight, flight, freeze, fawn, you essentially learned that fear-based dynamic. So not only is that entire dynamic in your life in regards to the survival-based childhood and how you've brought that into adulthood, not only is that fear-based, like that's real. Like if somebody is over and over again repeatedly showing you that they are incapable of being trusted, then you're going to continue the toxic cycle of the anxious attachment with them and regularly be afraid. It is also simultaneously, I want to say true, but I'm not trying to claim fact or truth here. I'm just trying to simply say, what if there's better for you? What if you were to stop choosing to fear because that was the comfortable and familiar dynamic from childhood? Fear yourself, fear your potential outside of the true to form role that you learned of survival-based dynamics, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Yeah, you learned as a person true to form roles. Oh, your role is to fight back in your relationships because you have to fight in order to be yourself. Yeah, in a survival-based relationship, you'll have to do that. But you don't have to be in a survival-based relationship. Um, you know, maybe you were taught to run away from your pain because it's pain and it's scary. I'll validate that, but there are healthier ways to approach it. Maybe you were taught that you have to fear people that are abusive, and so you shut down instead of either communicating your dislike and your needs in regards to how they treat you, or just altogether getting out of the relationship. Or you've learned that it's your job to fucking please people please, to emotionally caretake them, to make them feel better about themselves. All of these true to form roles from a survival based childhood quite possibly have you regularly in fear. Now, those dynamics and those types of relationships are probably not going to change. It takes a lot for a person to change. It takes a lot for a person to heal. But simultaneously recognize that you may be projecting the fear from all of that onto the unknown. The unknown is everything outside of the survival-based dynamics from childhood of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So instead of choosing to be afraid of the unknown simply because you're projecting that fear from what is known, and you know, well, if you don't like it, you know that you don't like it, but because it's so comfortable and familiar, and because fear is such a normalized theme in your life, you project that fear onto the unknown. And the unknown is nothing other than the unknown. You just don't know what it is, but you're projecting the fear onto the unknown. Yes, your childhood was probably scary if you were raised in fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Yes, you're probably traumatized, marred, and scathed from it. Yes, you probably have a lot of shit to work through. Yes, you were probably mind-fucked with fear, with neuroticism. You probably were, by people that severely lacked healthy boundaries. Does that mean that this is the way that life just has to be for you? No. Does it mean that if you're comfortable and familiar with it and you're scared of anything else, the likelihood that you will try to step out of that is very low? Yes. This is the difference between fear, shutting down, closing yourself off from the world, and getting curious. Isn't there more out there? Regardless of what you've learned thus far, especially starting in childhood, there is more out there, isn't there? No matter how much you've been gaslit into believing that a single individual is the only fucking person on the face of this planet for you in a world of 8+ billion people, yeah, give me a fucking break. Are you seeing it for what it is now? It's okay if you're not. I'm just doing everything that I can to help you understand the actuality of this. If you were raised in a survival-based childhood with fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the likelihood that you are mind-fucked with fear and neuroticism of, like, you should be extra concerned and careful about what you do because, the world is this fucking dark and terrible place. Some people, a portion of the population are unhealthy. That's the reality of it. Emotionally unhealthy. There is an entire other portion of the population that is healthy. You do not have to take your fear and project it out over the entire fucking world and be like, no, I will not do it. I will not go out there. I will not try to see if there's more for me. You can. You can. You can allow your survival-based childhood that likely fucked your mind with fear and neuroticism to take over and to just paralyze you and to stop you from, seeking better for yourself, to doing better for yourself, seeking more opportunity. You can. You absolutely can. You have free human agency. You're allowed to do what you so choose to. However, are you aware that if all of this is the case for you, if you were raised in a survival-based childhood with fight, flight, freeze, fawn, where you were mind-fucked with fear and neuroticism, Are you aware that that is the case? And if so, are you taking that fear and are you projecting it onto the unknown? The unknown that is just the unknown. Oh, I'm scared to let go of these relationships. Yeah, I understand, because you don't know anything other than that. You don't know anything other than the gaslighting and the fucking abuse and all of the fucked up dynamics that come with it. I understand that. You're afraid. You're simply choosing fear, though. So it's not like fear is automatic in your life. It's that it's comfortable and familiar. That's why it probably feels like it's automatic, if it does feel like it's automatic. And it's always going to be there. It's like wherever you are, there it is. Well, of course. The butler comes up with the silver platter, you take it off. Oh, there's the fear that I'm so comfortable and familiar with. Or, like, what if, like, oh, the butler comes up. I don't know why I choose to use butler, but whatever. Silver platter. Oh my God, curiosity. What does this mean? What do I do with this? You get curious. You understand that life is multidimensional and not just this one-dimensional flatland of all-consuming fear and neuroticism like you were taught in your survival-based childhood, if that does apply to you. And let me just end off with this. A lot of people were raised in a very one-dimensional childhood that mind-fucked them with absurdly stagnating perceptions of reality that are totally fucked up. One-dimensional ways of looking at things, black or white thinking, this or that. There's so much more to life. There's so much more to people. There's so much more to everything. You can choose to stay stuck there because you fear something, but there's this entire universe of potentials of like opening up and being like, whoa. And then like once you finally do that, if you so choose to, you might like turn around and be like, oh, I wish I did this sooner. Wow, there's so much to see, there's so much to learn, there's so much to explore, all of these different color palettes, all of these different things, trying different things. Yeah.